This is going to be a shorter episode today. And the topic of discussion for today is entities. So, entities are entities can be in the form of aliens, what society would think as, little green or gray men with big heads and big eyes. That could be an entity because they are able to shapeshift their energy. So, for me personally, an entity is it's energy. Sometimes they take on different shapes when I see them or when I can feel them. But it's entities are always an energetic makeup that comes through portals. It's always an energetic frequency makeup of matter, which can consist of various things. It's not necessarily uh, like the interstellar matter that you would see around like the rings of planets and in space. It's not necessarily that kind of matter. It's an energetic frequency basically, and all entities have varying sizes of their energetic frequency, but the size of their energetic frequency does not directly correlate to the size of the form they choose to take to be visible or to be felt. So, entities basically that's what they are. They can be demonic, they can be dark, which is not necessarily demonic, and then they can be light energy. So they don't all come from the same place. A lot of entities come from different planets or different solar systems where they have established civilizations. Some of them come from timelines, a lot of them come from portals. And when they come from portals, that portal can be of origination in a timeline or in the galaxy, in a different galaxy or from a different planet. The portals are just what they use to transform their energy from what it is into what it needs to be, depending on where they end up in the world. So if they end up in a place like Vegas, like they have a mission in Las Vegas, they need to acquire more of their energy more densely packed because Las Vegas has a lot of demonic entities and portals. And sometimes they can use those portals to slip through, and sometimes they will bring a portion of that energy, if it's a demonic portal that they're coming through, with them. It doesn't mean that they are demonic themselves, but it means that they kind of take on more of a darker energy. Entities, they all have different missions. Some of them are to um, transform into vessels for a particular mission. Like if it's demonic, they will take host in a vessel that from there they can control in the 3D world to create destruction, as sometimes that is their mission. Entities of the light can also do the same thing. They can also inhabit a vessel to maybe bring healing or bring education or to perform some sort of miracle or to help others find themselves. There's literally an infinite numbers of reasons why an energy would transform into a being or into the root of a tree or a body of water or an animal or a human. A lot of entities come by themselves. They have solo missions. There are groups of entities that have group missions, and they all have different abilities that kind of coincide with each other. So that's it's kind of like interlocking pieces of a puzzle. So it's what we humans would refer to as like a family of entities. They all kind of belong to each other's energetic signature. That's all parts that make up one complete energetic signature. Um, you typically would see these entities in animals, like in places where it's very, the energy is very sacred, like Sedona or Joshua Tree or the Bermuda Triangle. So a lot of the times the family of entities, as you would refer to it, it's not really what it's called in the astral, but there's not really a human terminology for what it would be called because they don't describe it in words. It's described in energetic frequencies. So a lot of times, as some of the things that I'm explaining, there's not really proper human language to put it into because a lot of times it's really hard to translate the energetic frequency that I'm getting or that I'm feeling into words. Sometimes there's just not any kind of human words that would encompass or explain that, but I'll try. So when these entity groups come through these portals, they typically will all inhabit the same vessel if possible, if there's enough room without destroying the vessel itself, or they will inhabit a group of animals or a group of trees or a large body of water that's moving. I'm not talking like a pond. Like it typically would have to have some sort of inlet and outlet source, like a river. Sometimes they will inhabit family members that are extremely close. And when that happens, typically, okay, so for instance, when entity groups inhabit groups of people, the way I have seen this play out, and I've seen it multiple times, I've experienced this in the 3D, not just the 5D, but in the 3D specifically, what happens is a group of family, there was, I think, 3 or 4, so 3 adults and 1 child. And they all went through this horrific wildfire that was crossing the road, okay? And the firefighters and the managers of how that works were trying to keep the fire contained. They thought it had it contained. This family was in a very large SUV, so they had a little bit more thermal safety around them because it takes longer for larger vessels to become, heated up. They were in this SUV, and there was a fire on the side of the road because I was behind them in this fire. This was in Southern California. I don't remember what year specifically, what part, but there was a very large fire that was on the side of the road, and it was getting ready to cross the highway, okay? This was like 3 or 4 lanes in each direction. And I remember seeing this fire and thinking, oh wow, that would be really horrible if it switched direction and crossed the road. And this big family in front of me, like they were literally 1 car length in front of me, but they were like in this lane because they hadn't quite merged yet. I don't know if they saw the fire and they just thought it wasn't going to jump, or they just felt like they had more time. Whatever the reasoning was, I am not dead sure. But they were in the lane closest to the fire. I was in this lane, and I saw it, and the cop was kind of waving us forward, and I just zoomed. I just floored it and freaking went flying past them. And right as they were going through the road where the fire was, the fire literally jumped. Like it literally jumped into the lane they were in. And I remember looking in my rearview mirror, holy fucking shit, they're gonna pass, because it literally just went right over them, under them, around them, and all I saw in my rearview mirror was this SUV just literally like with a firewall around it. I was like, oh, that's not good. And so I got across to where the safety part was and kind of slowed down and just looked in my rearview mirror, and then out of nowhere, this SUV comes flying past me, and you could see some of like the black smoke, like the outside of the SUV. You could tell. It looked like somebody, was fire damage. And but nobody was harmed. There was no major issues. There was like nothing wrong with it. And so I still believe to this day, because I was very young. I think I was 18 or 19 when this happened. I remember thinking they are very lucky, because a lot of times when fires engulf your car, you're stuck. You're stuck. You panic, you freeze, something happens, it's the windshield will blow out. Like I've seen some gnarly things happen, what fire does to cars, especially when it's extremely hot and it moves very quick with debris and embers and all that it's bringing with it. So I remember thinking, wow, they're really lucky, because trying to drive through a fire when all you see is fire and you can't see the road is scary. I've done it. It's not fun. It's not something I ever want to do again, but I've done it. So I understand. And just me driving through in my truck, I remember the door panel, because I didn't have the door panel on this particular truck. That door got so damn hot that it literally was like singeing the hairs on my arm. It was crazy. It looked like I had a sunburn all down this part of my arm. It was nuts. And so that's what I mean when I say that groups of light entities, or dark, but specifically in this case it was a group of light entities, came through this portal, which was the fire, because fire is a portal just like water is, and literally attached themselves to these vessels in this SUV to keep them safe. And I know there's a lot of people out there that have seen car accidents that people have walked away from with maybe cuts or bruises or scratches that statistically they should not have survived. That's exactly what happens, is that a light being entity will portal jump into that vessel to save it. A lot of times it's because that vessel has a particular mission, that soul has a particular mission in life that if they were to pass now, they wouldn't be able to complete it, and it's for the greater good of the humanity, so they have to complete it. So a lot of times, portals will open up literally at the split seconds before an accident happens, because the energetic frequency that happens be right before the impact. It's like a shockwave of energy is basically what happens right before the impact, because you've got a semi here, okay, and he's just kind of going, and you got another car that's, for whatever reason, maybe the brakes failed, or they weren't paying attention, or somebody pushed them from behind, or the weather was bad. There could be 100 different things. They go and they hit this, they're like literally right here about to hit this semi, about to hit that bar, and the energetic force just kind of, it goes out like a shockwave. And so then that's when a portal is created, and that's how a lot of entities get through. I've seen accidents. I've driven a lot across country, especially in my younger years. I've seen a lot of accidents that humans survived that there's no way they should have survived in any way, sense of the word. Not at all. And it is primarily because entities need to cross through a portal and take a vessel, a human host, latch onto their soul to help them create a mission. So that's how they would come through. When demonic entities come through as a group, which I rarely have seen or felt that, and when they come through in groups, it's typically 2 or 3. I've not seen or felt more than 4. Their energetic shockwave is different. It's destructive. So a lot of times if you see car accidents that are maybe at 20, 30 miles an hour, and there's a lot more destruction than there should be to the vehicles or to the surrounding area, and somebody is majorly hurt or they pass, because it does happen. You can pass from being in an accident going at 30 miles an hour. That typically is when a demonic entity has come through the portal that occurs right before the accident and takes host of the vessel. I have primarily seen this when a human is completely and blatantly ignoring their soul's call. Like they have abilities, they have a strong energetic frequency, but instead of using that for good, they choose to use it for evil, nefarious things. And in the human law world, murder is wrong. But in the astral world, it's not looked at like that, with that same lens that humans look at it. It's like if you take a life, no matter what they did, it's wrong. And the astral world, the punishment typically fits the crime, and the divine is very exact about how punishment is given. And I know this is going to come across as very cruel to some people who have maybe lost people that they have loved to horrific accidents. And for that, I'm sorry, that's not what I'm trying to project. But what I have seen and what I have experienced on numerous occasions is that humans that choose to give into the dark side, choose to be evil and purposely hurt people, purposely hurt animals, purposely destroy nature, are destructive to themselves, will purposely break the law, will hurt you and then laugh about it, or make fun of you and celebrate through your struggles on a repetitive basis. I'm talking years after years after years. I'm not talking like 2 or 3 days or a couple of weeks. This is a human that has actively chosen to go down the dark path. And when I'm talking about humans like that, I'm talking about like the rapists that are prolific, the murderers, the mass murderers, these people that are purposely plowing down the street at a fair into hundreds of people and laughing as they're being arrested. Those are demonic humans. And while they do have families and friends that love them and care for them and want them to get better, those type of people, they cannot be rehabilitated. And so by divine orchestration, they are essentially removed. And sometimes it's in horrific manners. And that is for a variety of reasons. Usually the way that they pass is very indicative of the destruction that they have put out across the world over their life. It's also to reset energetic frequencies, because to reset the frequencies, you have to destroy the portal that they were created through. Portals can be created and they can also be destroyed. Some are harder to destroy than others, depending upon how long they've been around, who created them, what kind of abilities they used to create them, what their purpose is. It can get very intricate into that. So the energetic portal needs to be destroyed that is demonic, and that is that's what's handed down from the divine law. And a lot of times divine law will go hand in hand with human law, but a lot of times it does not. And divine law supersedes human law every single time. So demonic entities tend to come through portals singularly most of the time. Sometimes they will come in 2 or 3 at a time. And that's when you tend to see human destruction or land or nature destruction on a big scale. I'm talking about protests, wars, riots, bombings, mass shootings, things of that nature. Those are largely energetic destructive frequencies. So those things tend to happen when demonic entity portals are destroyed. Now, demonic entities cannot be destroyed per se. Like you cannot completely destroy that energy because energy just changes and transmutes. But what you can do is fragment the energy. So I have seen demonic entities where their energetic frequency makeup becomes fragmented. It's typically into um, what I can liken to as like shards of glass. So a demonic entity to me would be like a mirror. And then when you fragment it, those pieces of that mirror can then be taken and distributed to different locations around the world and buried. They can be buried in deep vessels of water. Primarily, they are buried very deep in the earth, and I'm talking at least 100 feet or so. Um, Typically, those demonic entity shards are buried so far away from each other that they can't energetically magnetize each other. So they're typically, the shards are put in, and it's usually set up in a grid pattern of sorts. It has to be a grid pattern to basically repel the energetic forces from removing themselves, but also magnetizing the other parts. So there's a lot of energetic grid um, burial points across the world. I can't really say exactly what or where they are because I don't specifically know the coordinates of the locations. I could point out the general areas within 100 miles on a map, but those burial points are things that need to be kept disclosed at this point in time because other demonic entity energetic frequencies are also looking for those burial points to resurrect those shards of demonic entities to help complete their mission. Um, the Raggedy Ann doll, I'm not going to say the name. You guys all know what I'm talking about because just saying the name can activate demonic entity energy. That is a very strong demonic entity that is inside of that Raggedy Ann doll that has been deemed as possessed, demonized, however you want to terminology it. That is a very strong demon, very strong. That is one of the strongest demons I have ever energetically pinged, and I have come in contact or been able to feel the energy of thousands of demonic entities, millions of light entities, thousands of demonic entities. The number of light entities compared to the number of demonic entities is so out. It's so far apart. Like the number of light entities is literally in the millions. I think it's somewhere around, I don't know, 5 or 6 million. Dark demonic entities. That number is it's more in the thousands. Like it's somewhere between like 850,000 to right under a million. But they can be stronger than light entities. A lot of light entities are very small. They don't have a ton of energetic frequency. So their capacity for energetic frequency output is not as high as a demonic entity frequency, which has been around for millions of years and can shapeshift and pull other demonic entities to it to become bigger and more powerful. And that's typically how that happens. So back to the humans, and demonic entities definitely can possess the vessel. So like I was saying, unfortunately, some of the ones that are going to become the most destructive in the long term for the planet and for the greater good of the galaxy need to be fragmented and buried. Typically, before this happens to demonic entities in power across the world, you will see a lot of civilian injustice, civilian violence, um, a lot of I like to refer to it as whiplash power policies from those in power, where they will exact some sort of punishment to the civilians because they think that they're a lower class and should be punished. Also, they do that to keep the lower, what they deem as lower class of humans. They're not really a lower class of humans, but that's how they, in their mind and their verbiology, that's what they say. It's a lower class of civilians. They do that to strip power, to make it lay dormant, to silence it, to grow your fear and silence your power. And so they tend to exact down a punishment. Say it's higher taxes or it's more restrictions on, I don't know, how you can buy a house. There's a million ways that they do it. And then when they see the reaction from the civilians, it kind of scares them. They like the reaction, but then they kind of get scared because they go into this, well, if they all band together, there's more of them than there is of us, and they can overthrow us, so let's throw them a bone. And this is where the whiplash comes from. They first exact down a punishment that they deem, important, which it's not, and then they will either yank it back and they will say, oh, well, we're going to change this. We're going to take this back so you guys get back what we were trying to take from you. Or they will modify it and they will modify, what they've exacted down and say, okay, well, here, we're going to add this incentive into this so that it's not really that bad. And that's the energetic whiplash, because then you're kind of confused and you're left reeling, and it's like, okay, well, what's going to happen next? Is my life secure? Is my future secure? Is my friends, my family, my job, is all that secure? Is everything going to be okay? Are we going to be healthy? And it puts you into a state of running in circles and overthinking and not sleeping and stress eating or stress smoking or not wanting to go to work or overworking because you feel like you have to cement your position. And none of what you're doing, none of what the civilians doing or what they're not doing is going to really it's not really going to change the pattern of demonic behavior, the pattern of demonic policies. It's not going to change that per se. But what it does is that it shifts it. It shifts it. And then civilians are realizing it shifts it more, and it kind of awakens, because then there's discrepancies. And this is where the divine law steps in, because then the divine law creates miracles in people's lives. It creates miracles in the world. It creates visual miracles where you're seeing different gods and goddesses and angels in the clouds, or you're seeing faces in trees, or you're seeing animals that are coming to you for help or guidance, or they're helping you in some way, form, or fashion. Or another human is coming to your rescue, or there's a bunch of different ways that it can manifest. So these forces are always kind of jarring against each other. It's like a tug and a pull. When that happens, when you have an event where it's demonic energy, like a mass casualty, and then you have another event that's of divine light, where somebody who tries to hurt another person then gets worldwide canceled. That light energy will grow in strength significantly more than the demonic energy, because the demonic energy is just bent on destruction and pain. The light energy is bent on love and compassion, growing and healing. So it's able to grow and absorb much more energy around it, which is why you see a lot of times people of all walks of nature just banding together to support one cause. You see it all the time. Um, Demonic forces choose to regulate how that's seen and heard and received, but the divine light has ways of finagling around that and pushing back on it. And we see that. We see it all the time. So, entities can take light or dark forms. They primarily take the form of human vessels. So they either can portal jump into an existing vessel, or they can portal jump into a vessel that's in utero. They can also manifest, basically, a holographic image that becomes solid of a human to do the necessary mission that they are tasked with. Sometimes that will happen because the vessel that was deemed suitable before the mission started was not completely online. So maybe the vessel that they were trying to jump into to finish their mission was not fully spiritual awake, had maybe started the process, but still was kind of, sorry, sugar. Sorry, baby. Maybe was kind of halfway through their awakening, or they were fighting it because they hadn't completely worked through the shadow side of their ego. It happens. Sometimes divine plans don't always go according to plan, and then there's deviations and adjustments that need to be made. That does happen. But the entity that has a mission to fulfill always finds the correct vessel, whether that's human, animal, plant life, a body of water, something of that nature. They always find what they need. So, trying to think of what I haven't covered yet. Okay, so far I've covered light entities, demonic entities, portals entities can come through, portal entities can create, fragmentation of entities, origins of entities. I know there's a few more I'm missing. I'm just not thinking of it off of the top of my head, which is okay. I can come back to it later. The first time I remember encountering an entity, I'm trying to think of how old I was. I was probably 7, as far back as I can recollect. I was 7. And there was an incident that involved an incident that happened that involved my mother at the time. And I had a very tumultuous relationship with my mother. She's no longer around. She's been passed for a long time. But I had a tumultuous relationship with her. There was never that maternal bond when I was born. And it took me a very long time, most of my life, to deduce exactly what that was and why that occurred. So I spent a lot of my life trying to figure out why she did not like me, why we had such a disharmony in our mother-daughter relationship, why I was tasked with doing the worst things as far as chores and helping her with whatever it was that she needed. Why I had no freedom compared to my other siblings. There's 100 questions why and then some. Um, I now know that most of her life she had demonic possessions. Um, 2 or 3. Towards the end of her life, probably more. But when I was 7 years old, something happened that she blamed me for, that I really had no responsibility over because I was 7. And a side of her emerged that was very violent towards me and almost ended my life that day. And I remember sitting there thinking, when my dad came home, I remember sitting there crying to myself, like in the corner in the closet, wondering why my mother hated me so much that she was constantly trying to take my life. And she never laid a hand on any of my other siblings that were full blood siblings. Like, she never touched them. And I remember thinking that day, that cannot be my mother. Because she had been mean to me before, but she had not been that violent to my recollection before. And it was definitely a different side of her that emerged. And over the years, I began to decipher the pattern of when that side of her would emerge. I could tell in the morning when I woke up by her energy if the demonic side of her was coming out or if the light side of her was battling back. She was essentially 2 different people, and one person did not know that the other person existed. And she had been diagnosed with bipolar and various other things, which I'm not going to go into, but the misdiagnosis really came to the soul conditions that she had. Her soul really was fragmented and needed help being put back together. And me being a 7-year-old child sitting there watching her, and I would literally sit there and watch her for hours and study her energy because it was fascinating to me. I didn't understand at such a young age how one human can embody such vastly different energies and vastly different behaviors, and how they could still coincide in one vessel. Like, I didn't get it. I get it now. I totally get it now. But back then I didn't know. So that was the first time I very vividly, and I still vividly remember the details of exactly what led up to her attacking me, what happened afterwards. I still remember everything. But that was the very first time I remember seeing that demonic side of her. And it came out several times. I mean, more than several times, dozens and dozens of times over the years until her death. But that was the very first time I remember it. And there were times when I got very, very upset and wanted to, like, throttle her. But never once did I ever think about taking her out, even though she had tried to take me out. I don't even know how many times. But I just remember I would sit there and I would watch her. Sometimes through the window, sometimes through the reflection of the TV, sometimes when she was just not lucid, and just watch her energy. And the way that demonic energy would literally flicker in and out, and you could see it in her eyes. You could see the change. And it was the way she would turn and look at you, like she was staring through your soul, but there was such a fiery, misplaced anger about it. Like, if she could shoot laser beams, you'd be in trouble. And it got to the point where I didn't even need to visually see the change to see the flicker in her eyes. I could just read her energy. I knew as soon as she pulled into the cul-de-sac what kind of mood she was in, what kind of destruction there was going to be, or what kind of destruction there wasn't going to be. I always knew. And it was wild. That was my very first introduction to, long-term introduction to a demonic entity. Um, yeah, so there's that story. I mean, I have hundreds of other stories, whether I may or might not ever get into those, but she was the very first person in my life that long term had demonic entities attached to her. And when I was that little, I knew I had abilities, but I didn't know the capacity of my own power, especially for healing and reading energy and transmutation. I know that now. I'm very aware of how all that stuff works. And those are things that I use on a daily basis. But back then I didn't know that. I had no idea. I knew that my mom had a lot of power because I could feel it. I mean, people literally cowered in front of her, and she was all of like 5'1", 5'2", and 110 pounds. And grown men twice her size were literally terrified of her. And it was her power. It was her power. And it's so crazy how a vessel can hold that much power. But at the same time, when a vessel holds that much power, whether it's good or bad, it changes. You notice physical changes in your body. When a vessel is infiltrated by a demonic entity, because I'm not going to say possessed because that doesn't always happen, but when they are infiltrated, it changes their physical features, sometimes very drastically. If you look at a vessel that had, when it had no previous demonic entity attachments, pictures or videos, and then you go 5 or 10 years and there's a very clear illustration of a demonic entity attachment, and you look at the pictures in the video, it's almost like two different people. It's almost like two different people. And the change is so wild. That can also happen with light entities. If you are a vessel that has been infused with light entities, especially more than one, your physical vessel will also change. You will acquire new abilities or enhance old abilities. Your skin will get clearer, your hair will get healthier, your whatever medical conditions, if you had any, will clear up, or they'll change, they'll lessen. Um, your body will become more toned. Your jawline or your cheekbones might become more defined. Your eye color can change. Your eating habits always change, no matter if you are inhabited by a dark or light entity. It changes your appetite, it changes your cravings, your addictions. It can either remove or create addictions depending on which side of the entity you get, if it's dark or light. Can change your interaction with pets. When you are inhabited by a demonic entity, any pets around you will become aggressive towards you. So if you have a person, family, friend, relative, whatever, who you have, let's say you have a dog and you have your neighbor, I don't know, Theodore, and your dogs always love Theodore. Like, they're buddies, they're pals, they hang out. And then maybe Theodore goes on vacation and then he's really busy with his job or whatever and doesn't see the dog for a couple of months, and then comes back and has made some lifestyle changes, and then the dog recognizes him but is then growling or lunging or biting or just not wanting to, um, just not happy to see Theodore. That's typically why. That's typically what happens. The animals pick up on it right away. So if a human around you has a demonic entity that's taken up residence, all of a sudden the animals would become very aggressive. Not just animals that are known to that person, but animals in general that have probably never been aggressive before. That's why a lot of times you hear or see these stories about how somebody's out walking their dog, or their dog's at a dog park. The dog's never been aggressive, never nipped, never bit, never growled, never raced its hackles, never done anything. And all of a sudden you go to a park or you go on a walk, and this dog is just lunging and growling and spitting and hissing and doing all the shit to a person. It's because that person has a demonic entity. Animals can pick up on that stuff. And vice versa. If you have, let's say your dog's not aggressive, but they're territorial, like they won't let anybody come around your kids, or nobody can put their hand in the car when you're in the car with the dog. And then you go to a park or you're on a walk or you go to the beach, and all of a sudden there's another human, and this dog just makes a beeline and is jumping on the human and wanting to be pet and scratched and rub it over, roll over and let you pet their belly. It's because that human has particular um, light energies, and all light energies are good and happy for animals, like they're all positive things, but certain light entities have a stronger magnetism. They have more divine structure. So think of like a honeycomb. All light energies to me, they kind of show up as like honeycombs, but when you have a light being that has a stronger power, it's like honeycomb with honey in it. So neither one of them is bad. One's not necessarily better than the other. One is just stronger. It has more light codes activated in it. So animals can see that. Yeah, I've covered a lot. Um, I know I've blown some minds. If anybody has any questions, please ask me. I will be happy to answer. And I want y'all to understand that just because I do have a lot of knowledge and personal divine experience with these things, there's still things I don't know. There's still a lot of things I'm learning. I'm still getting a lot of downloads and visions and things from Source. And there's a lot more knowledge behind every one of those things singularly, and also how they are cohesive as a whole and how they can affect you in the world. So I'm still learning every day. I'm still gaining knowledge, and my goal is just to share that with you guys, not to scare anybody or freak anybody out or make anybody paranoid, but just to make you aware, so that when things are happening around you, mental illness is not the first thing you're jumping to, because none of these things fall under the umbrella of mental illness until you start going to traditional doctors and therapists. They are programmed, they are incentivized, given incentives to diagnose seers, mystics, psychics, wizards, witches, warlocks, priestesses, prophetesses, anybody that falls under that parameter of having divine knowledge, of having paranormal activity that they experience. They are trained, they are drilled into their head to automatically diagnose anybody with those kind of abilities as mentally ill. Typically, they will diagnose you as schizophrenic, which is I can't really say medically if that's a real thing or not, because I'm not a doctor. But I know as a shaman, as a healer, what they diagnose schizophrenia as and how they market that as an illness, it's not really what it is. You will also tend to be diagnosed as autistic, ADHD, anxiety, depressed, bipolar, borderline personality disorder, mood disorder. All of those mental health disorders are spiritual conditions. Okay? They are manifested symptoms in your psyche and in your body of a spiritual condition that is happening with your soul, which is why a lot of these mental illnesses, they never truly get to the root of the source, because the root of the source is a spiritual, it's in divine in nature. And most of these doctors are Christianity faith based. And so a lot of the medical system has a Christianity or Catholic base. It's primarily Christian. Now, personally, I don't believe religion should be dictating how we're diagnosing people and how those treatments are going. I just don't think that they go hand in hand. A lot of people would say that I'm wrong, and that's okay. I understand that. I get that. But in my personal experience as a healer who has had demonic entity attachments and cleared them successfully and kept them from reattaching or new ones forming, and it was also cleared countless other humans, animals, um, land, buildings, and nature, they're not mental illnesses. People who are diagnosed with schizophrenia are not mentally ill. This is going to be another video that I go into where I break that down. But in my personal experience in consulting with the divine council, because it's a divine council of beings that are ascended masters, have been around for thousands and thousands of years, they are spiritual conditions. They are conditions that your soul goes through when it fragments from trauma. And that can be physical trauma, it can be mental, it can be emotional, or it can be all of them. But your soul gets fragmented. And there are ways to heal that. It can be healed. It's not an overnight fix by any means. The people that I have healed their fragmented souls, it typically takes weeks, sometimes months. Sometimes it can take up to a year for the full range to really be noticed, not just in the soul, but in the psyche and the vessel. It can take a while. When I went through the healing of my own soul, which was fragmented through trauma, I've actually been through a lot of trauma in my life, more than just about anybody I've met. And I don't say that to be conceited. I say that because I have been through a shit ton of trauma. Like, it literally rivals war soldiers, war veterans. And I've traded stories with them, so I know. So because a lot of the trauma I went through, parts of my soul became fragmented. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you lose them or they disappear. They're still part of your soul, but it's like a fragment of your soul will get tinged with a darker aura or a darker energetic essence of sorts. And then if you don't fix that fragment, if you don't heal that, it can eventually spread through and fragment the rest of your soul. So you have to heal it, which is not easy. It's really not. It's not an overnight fix. It took me probably 5 years to fully heal the parts of my soul that were fragmented. And there were many times where I almost passed. Legitimately did not almost make it. So it's the capacity to heal those fragments of your soul, if that happens through trauma, is there. It can be done. You would need a root worker such as myself to do that. It's not a one and done, wham bam, thank you ma'am session. It's typically something that takes several sessions, but it can be done. So, like I said, my goal is not to like scare or anger, upset, or make anybody feel ostracized or targeted. That is not my goal at all. I am sharing through my personal experiences how I've overcome things, because my stories are somebody's survival guide. And this, every time I talk about this, it always chokes me up. And even though I've done a shit ton of healing, because I know, and I've had the verification and the validation from other humans that the things that I've survived, the way I was able to get through them, has saved other people from self-murdering. I know that to be a fact. So maybe you're the person that's going through some of the things that I'm going through, and you don't know how to get out. You can get out. Don't let those things that are trying to drag you down and claw at your heart and claw at your mind and claw at your soul, do not let those things get you so low to a point where you feel like the only option is to self-murder, because that is not the only option. There are people, there are humans, there are that are healers, that are compassionate, that are light beings who have been through what you've been through. Every healer, every light worker has to go through horrible things in order to find their light and find their power and to put that out into the world. I have not met a healer who hasn't been through traumatic things. It's what forges you in the fire so that you can be strong enough to wield your power to heal and help others. And it sucks. It's horrible. Humans shouldn't have to go through the traumatic things that they do. And it's never okay. But it happens. And a lot of times it is divinely necessitated because you are supposed to change the world. Your words, your actions, your power, your masculinity, your femininity, your soul, your intellect is meant to change the world, to save other people. How are you going to help save, heal, and educate other people through traumatic things if you have not been through that personally? You can, but it's not as effective. So that is the mindset that the divine is sitting on when a lot of these traumatic things happen. And I've explained this to other people, and they said, oh, you're blaming the victims, and you're doing this and you're doing that. And that's not what it is. I'm explaining from the lens of the Astral High Council, because there is one, it does exist, and it's rather large, how things are orchestrated out, especially traumatic things. So if you feel like everything is falling apart and your only option is to self-murder, send me a message, leave me a comment, please. Find my TikTok, find my Facebook, send me a DM. I may not be able to heal everything, but I'm here to listen, to give advice on situations that maybe you're going through and nobody around you knows how to help you, or they don't know what to say. DM me, please.